Hi guys, I'm Woodcraft Hamster, and I did a video recently about choosing different types of wood for carving in terms of something that has been fully seasoned as opposed to something that has maybe fallen and started to sort of decompose a little bit but is still okay for carving. And the purpose of that video really came following a conversation I'd had with some fellow wood carvers that I know who would normally kind of steer away from that kind of wood. Now they're in a very lucky position. They have access to freshly felled green timber pretty much whenever they need it, but a lot of us don't. And really this was just a follow-up, and what I wanted to show you was this. Now this is a piece of wood that I harvested recently. It came from a tree that had fallen at least a good couple of weeks before I went anywhere near it, and it has sort of started the very early stages of decaying. You can see a bit of woodworm in there, you can see some spalting on the end, and what I really wanted this video to be about was I was just going to take you through how I would carve this. And the sort of the benefits and the disadvantages of carving this kind of wood. You know, once it's finished, provided it dries without splitting, it will be absolutely fine. And really, I just wanted to show you kind of the things you need to take into account, i.e. when you're carving into this kind of wood, it does have a tendency to kind of come away in small chunks rather than cut cleanly. Not all the time, but it does happen occasionally. And really that's what I wanted to talk about. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to move the camera a bit closer just so you can get a good view of what it is I'm actually doing, and I'll take you through it step by step. Okay, so hopefully you guys can see, there's a fairly good close-up of this piece of wood, and it's, how can I put this, it's in relatively good condition. You know, it's certainly not falling apart. I can take my gouge like this, you know, it's cutting nice and cleanly as I'd expect it to do with fairly fresh wood. There's a lot of moisture in this, which is good for us, certainly until it starts drying. But as I say, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to work this down. I'm going to start off with my gouge here, just to sort of open this up just a little bit before I start moving on to other tools. And as I say, there are a lot of people who would look at this. I mean, as you can see, there's a nice big chunk sort of come off here. Hopefully you can see that okay on the camera there. And that's just because it is at the very early stages of starting to go slightly punky. And that's just what you need to be careful with when you're carving this kind of wood. Now, a lot of people would look at this either out in the field or the piece I've got in front of me here today, and they would shy away from it. Certainly if I had a better quality, slightly fresher piece of wood to hand, I'd probably use that over this for carving purposes. However, not everybody, myself included, has the luxury of having freshly cut green wood available to them. And again, depending on where you live in the country and where you have access to, you know, you may only have access to kind of public land, and unfortunately you cannot go onto public land and just start chopping down trees. Other people may have access to private land, which is great, but again it depends on what the restrictions are. Like myself, you know, I'm not allowed to cut down any trees on the land I have availability of, but I am welcome to take dead and fallen trees, which is great news for me. But it does mean you kind of have to be on the eye out, have your eye out on things, and you have to be willing to accept less than ideal materials, which is essentially what this is. But what I really want to do with this video is just kind of demonstrate and sort of show people that you don't have to have that perfect piece of material to make a good carving. You know, this was what I had available to me, this is what I'm going to be using. So moving on now to my Twicker cam, which I think you guys will have seen before, and this is where it gets a little bit more difficult to work with materials like this. Using a gouge and sort of carving and even an axe or an adze or something like that is fine, even if you get a few big bits breaking away, because it just helps you remove the stock. But when you're starting with something like this with a fine blade on it, and what you're trying to do is remove bits of material by sort of cutting rather than gouging or hacking at it with an axe, that's where it can get a little bit tricky. Now it's actually cutting relatively well here at the moment, but hopefully you can sort of see this here. It is getting sort of slightly chewed up. Now that's fine, and it's not a huge concern, but what you will find is that as you start getting down to the final parts of your bowl, if it's a bowl you're making, as I am here, you will need to bear in mind that you will need to let it dry out a little bit more than maybe you would do to do the finishing, and you'll probably need to do a little bit more sanding than you would do on a normal piece of wood. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to spend a little bit of time on this, and I'm going to sort of open it out a bit more to where I'd expect it to be before I start trying to smooth things down, and then I'll show you where it is I would normally go from there. Right guys, well that was probably about 40 minutes worth of work just to hollow out this bowl, and as I say, it's looking very nice. I'm quite pleased with it. Now hopefully you can see from here there are some areas sort of here, a little bit here, where things have sort of, you know, because they are going ever so slightly punky, they're slightly softer than the surrounding material. Now again, there's no issue with that, there's no problem at all. It just makes it a little bit more difficult to carve. But this bowl is pretty much where I want it to be. I'm just going to use my finishing gouge just to smooth things down a little bit. And the one thing I did want to say, even though most people would consider this an inferior material to carve with, mostly because it is at the very beginning stages of going rotten, and I'm not sure how well this is picking up on the camera, but my finishing gouge is actually just sliding through this, probably even better than it would do with some fresh green wood, which would be sort of slightly stronger, would give a little bit more resistance. So really what I'm going to do, I'm going to spend another 5 minutes or so just smoothing this down, getting rid of some of the tool marks made by the Tooker cam. And that'll probably be it pretty much for this video. And what I will do, I'll cut and bring you in a close-up just to show you where we've got to with this bowl, and then maybe I'll do another video just to sort of show finishing it off with the saw and the axe at another point. Right, so we're pretty much done. This is the finished result, and hopefully you can see that on the camera. Yeah, there's still a fair few tool marks in there which will come out when we do sanding, but all in all, you know, quite a nice little bowl. I like the you know, some of the sporting has picked up in there. Obviously there's quite a lot of little holes from woodworm and things. I mean, that's fine. I mean, this is predominantly going to be more of a decorative bowl than a user, though to be honest, once I've oiled and waxed this, you know, it will retain liquid. Nothing will leach out, so it should be fine. And as I say, I mean, you know, the whole purpose of this video was really to sort of show you that this type of wood, which would quite often be overlooked and you know, considered not suitable for carving, is actually perfectly fine. You know, if that's all you can get hold of, you can certainly make some really nice pieces out of, you know, wood that's fallen and has been out for a little while, provided it's sound and it's solid. You know, even if you've got a few holes in there, things like that, should be absolutely fine. What I may do, I'm going to put this away now in a carrier bag, just let the wood sort of stabilise itself a bit after the carving, and I will come back to this probably later in the week, just to take the corners off, smooth it down with the axe a little bit, and then let it dry out a bit more before the final sanding. Now you've seen me make these kind of things before, so whether or not I make another video I haven't yet decided. If you really want to sort of see this, the conclusion of this, just drop me a note in the comments and I'll happily do it. But anyway guys, I hope it was useful. I hope it give you something to think about, that, you know, as much as everybody would love to have that perfect piece of wood stock to be able to you know, carve their bowl, their spoon, whatever it is, you don't have to have a perfect piece of wood for it. You can go with something like this, which a lot of people would say would pass over and just say, well, you know what, that looks a bit rotten, I'm going to leave it. Alternatively, you know, you can also go with wood that is really seasoned, really hard, no moisture in it whatsoever. I tend to steer away from that kind of wood if I'm making bowls or things with big indentations, because it's just a hell of a lot of work to try and do it with a piece of wood like that. But if I'm making spoons, if I'm making spatulas, it actually saves a lot of time. You can just sort of split it down with a thrower or an axe really easily, mark out your design, carve away, and it's really nice to carve stuff like that, especially if it's on the sort of thinner side, that kind of thing. Anyway guys, hope it was useful, gave you something to think about. Comments and questions in the box below. Hit like and subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I hope you'll all join me next time. Thanks guys.